Hello and welcome back to INMR, where in today's podcast I'm going to be talking about one player every Premier League club needs to sign. I've done this for the last 2 seasons, so we're doing it again now. The way this works is that the players that I'm going to suggest maybe aren't realistic and obvious ones, but clues in the title, it's who they need rather than who they're most likely going to sign. So we'll start off with Arsenal because it's probably the most obvious ones. We'll get it out of the way before we suggest ones that are a little bit more exciting. It is Alexander Isak. I think Arsenal need a number 9 in order to complete this squad. I think that was the only thing that was missing this year. They were, against Man City or coming up against perfection. It's very difficult to overcome that. But I think with a number 9 in the squad, that is that little bit that they need. And Isak is one of the best strikers. He's Premier League proven. It's going to be tricky to get a deal because it's reported that Newcastle are going to try and get 200 million for him, which is way too much in my opinion. But this is who Arsenal need in order to just get over the line next season against Manchester City. Next team is Aston Villa, and the player they need is actually already linked, but I think I would have suggested him anyway because he looks like he's really going to suit Villa's style, especially for next season. It is Alex Baena from Villarreal. He's set the season alight in La Liga for Villarreal. He's only 22 years old. He plays very similarly to how Coutinho did at Liverpool. He's obviously not quite at that prime level yet that we seen from Coutinho when he was in the Premier League, but he's certainly on his way. And when you watch Baena play, you can see glimpses of that. He can play in many forward positions, a very versatile attacking midfielder. He's got great vision, great passing range. There isn't much he can't do. And I think, of course, Villa are going to be going for depth, but this is certainly a starter in their squad. He's played under Emery before. He would really suit Villa and I think would give them a massive boost in the Champions League next season. For Bournemouth, I've gone for Sami Szmodics, who I mentioned in a previous podcast about 5 players who were ready for the Premier League, and I'm sticking by that with him. He has been unbelievable for Blackburn this season, 27 goals from centre attacking mid. I think this works both ways for Bournemouth. If Dominic Solanke leaves, you've got Szmodics who can still get the goals for Bournemouth from deeper positions. If Solanke doesn't go, then Szmodics can start to become a provider as well as get the goals. So you're going to have an abundance of goals in this side if they both stay. And as Szmodics improves his link-up play, he can get a few more assists. I don't see how this transfer can go wrong. So I think he's somebody that Bournemouth definitely should consider. Man City, I feel like every time I do this sort of podcast, I go for the same sort of position. But again, it is a left back in Ferland Mendy. I think that if Real Madrid decide to go for Alphonso Davies and bring him in, then Ferland Mendy's got to go. They'll probably offload him, and City do need a proper left back. Gavardio, I think, has really grown into that left back role towards the end of this season, but he was bought in because of what he can do in his preferred position, which is centre-back. We saw him at the World Cup absolutely flourish. That was at centre-back. So I think putting him in his natural position and then bringing in Ferland Mendy at left-back would suit City really well. Of course, it's another speedy full-back, which is going to cause loads of problems for the opposition. I think whatever City do, there's hardly anything they need to improve on. They've done it with non-conventional fullbacks, but I think this is the next step for them, just to bring in somebody that actually is a left back and allow those players that have adapted to go back into their more comfortable roles. For Brighton, this was a tricky one because obviously for me, I think there's 5 or 6 players that Brighton need in order to have a much better season than they just did, but I've gone for Gabriel Sara. He's a versatile midfielder. He can play anywhere in that midfield. He does most of his best work higher up, which of course is going to suit Brighton well if Pascal Gross does go. But also Sara can be versatile as Gross is, come back and do the dirty work in defence as well. So I think he'd be a really good one. Of course, as I said, Brighton needs a new right back, some wingers. There's so much that they need, but I think Sara sort of covers the whole of that spine with his versatility. In possession, he's technically brilliant, and I think he's another one who I mentioned in the podcast of players that are ready for the Premier League. He is definitely one. For Brentford, I initially thought about somebody that could come in and replace Ivan Toney, but Brentford have of course already done that in bringing in Igor Thiago. So for Brentford, I think their focus is more on replacing Mbeumo, who is inevitably going to go at some point. So I've chosen Crescencio Somerville for that. He is wanted by plenty of Premier League squads, but I think Brentford need him. Somerville likes to come inside and drive at defences. He can play on both wings. I think it's a really smart move if they went for this. For Chelsea, this is probably the least realistic one on the list, but he would be excellent under Enzo Maresca, and that is Xavi Simons. I've watched Leipzig 4 or 5 times this season, and every game he has been brilliant. It's so easy for him when he's playing by the looks of things. He just glides through the pitch. He's really good in them small spaces, which of course is always a recipe for success. He's so good with his feet, and he's still young, but he's now becoming that goal scorer and provider. He's got 8 goals, 11 assists this season, so I can only see him getting better and better, and he would suit Chelsea, but obviously isn't the most realistic of moves. For Ipswich, I think, in my opinion, promoted sides always have to prioritise going for a goalkeeper. We saw Luton do it with Thomas Kaminski. Yes, they went down, but I think they held on for a very long time, and that was because of how good of a shot stopper Kaminski was. So I've gone for Ipswich to get Marek Rodak. His contract expired with Fulham at the end of this season, so it's a free move and it will be a big boost for their survival hopes. I think Ipswich are probably going to be favourites to go straight back down, so bringing in an experienced goalkeeper would be a good move for all parties. Rodak's obviously going to be at the Euros, so for Ipswich fans, I think this is one to keep an eye on, see how he performs there. This is a really important one because if they don't bring in a goalkeeper as soon as possible, I think that could be what kills these newly promoted sides. For Fulham, this is actually one I can see happening. I think it would be a really good deal if it does. I've gone for Joel Matip. Obviously, Tosin Adarabioyo is about to complete his move to Chelsea as a free agent, so I think you need to obviously replace him because he's a brilliant defender, and Joel Matip is another free agent who they can bring in, really cost-effective move, and somebody that has a lot of experience and can definitely still play at that top level. Matip's a really good centre-back, but obviously with the likes of Virgil van Dijk and Kwanzaa now being that defensive pair, there just wasn't a spot for him at Liverpool, but I think he's definitely good enough to be playing week in, week out, and I think at Fulham he can be a really good starter for them. And yeah, as I say, I don't think this is an impossible move, and it'll be a really smart move for whoever does go for Joel Matip. I think he's a very underrated defender. For Everton, I think they should gamble a bit in this window. I've gone for Matheus Nascimento. He's a 20-year-old striker from Botafogo in Brazil. He's got bags of potential. I think Dominic Calvert-Lewin just hasn't been good enough this season, and for years now they've had this experienced striker and it just hasn't quite ever worked out. So I think now's the time to take a gamble on a younger striker because you've got nothing to lose. They've got an incredible defence, in my opinion. The amount of clean sheets they've kept this season is up there with Arsenal, but it's just they don't score enough goals, so defence isn't where they need to improve. They've got some really talented players in midfield, it's just they don't score enough goals. And Calvert-Lewin, yes, provides that experience, as I said, but why not go a bit off-piste and see what happens, because Everton do have nothing to lose. Nascimento is a born poacher. He's very composed in front of goal, very mobile striker. He likes to get in behind and obviously get those 1v1s against the goalkeeper, but he can also drop in and receive. I think this would be a very surprising move, but I do think it's something they need to do. They need to change it up a little bit. Why not give it a go? Worst case scenario, he doesn't perform that well. Okay, you stick with what you've got, you survive, you do what you've done every season. Best case scenario, you've got this incredible young Brazilian striker who's getting you goals left, right and centre. 3 years' time, you make a brilliant amount of profit. I think, as I say, nothing to lose with this one. For Spurs, I think the issue this season is that they didn't properly replace Harry Kane, so I've gone for something that can fix that. I've gone for Artem Dovbyk from Girona. According to FB Ref, the stats show that they're very similar, not in just goals scored, but just the way that they play. You can see that Dovbyk's style is similar to Kane's, and obviously he clearly has that knack for scoring goals. 24 this season in La Liga alongside 8 assists. His movement is great, and because of his physicality, he can outmuscle defenders as well as outrun them, which obviously suits the Premier League to a T. In my opinion, he is exactly what Spurs need next year in order to push on. For Liverpool, it's a bit tricky because, of course, a new manager coming in, you don't know what the new style is going to be, who he's going to want. Every time a new manager comes in, a new player breaks out as they suit their style of play better. This player is Johan Bakayoko. He is an all-round winger. He's previously been linked with Liverpool about 6 months ago, but nothing really came of it. I think now he is definitely one to go for. He's been called up for the Belgium squad, and he's definitely one to look out for at the Euros. A few people might remember him from his games against Arsenal in the Champions League. Although PSV were heavily beaten, Bakayoko had a really good game. He's a direct winger, good in a 1v1, dominant in the air as well. And I think with rumours of Diaz potentially going, Salah potentially going, they need to bring in a winger. And Bakayoko, I think, is the next big thing. For Southampton, I haven't gone for a goalkeeper. The player that I've gone for is much more needed and would suit Southampton really well, and that is Alfie Doughty from Luton. I think he's going to be a real bargain, as Luton have been relegated, so they're going to need to offload a few players. Ross Barkley's already been confirmed as an Aston Villa player, and I think Doughty's the next to go because he was just incredible last season. He's going to be a wanted man. I think a lot of clubs are going to be looking at him. 8 assists, an average 1.9 key passes per 90. He would suit that Southampton system really well. You can see him, obviously Kyle Walker-Peters was brilliant in the Championship last season in terms of getting forward, and Doughty could do the exact same thing. So with that fullback combination, I think Southampton are going to be really dangerous if they can bring him in. For Leicester, they've obviously got a very good team already, lots of experience in attacking Jamie Vardy. Dewsbury Hall seems to be staying now as well. So I have gone for a goalkeeper again. I've gone for Alvaro Valles. He's a ball-playing goalkeeper playing for Las Palmas at the minute. To be honest, he more suited Enzo Maresca's playing style, and obviously he has now gone. But I think the next manager will probably play a very similar style of football because you often go for somebody like your previous manager. And Valles is just that. He's a great shot stopper, sweeper keeper, and a very all-round goalkeeper. Really good with his feet. And I think, for what Leicester are going to try and do this year, to have once again a goalkeeper that is going to get you those extra points that at the end of the season could be so vital, it would be silly not to bring him in. Man United, this is a tricky one. I think a lot of this is very subjective. People could say a striker, but I think personally you need to give time to the young players that you've spent a lot of money to bring in. I think one thing they struggled with last season was their depth in centre-back. So I think bringing in Nacho would be a clever move. Obviously he's going to be available as a free agent, and is definitely still able to play at the highest level. Paired up with Lisandro Martinez, I think it's a step in the right direction for Man United. And as I said before, people need to give players like Højlund a bit of time. They need to give players like Onana a bit of time. They didn't become bad players overnight. There needs to be time, and there needs to be a system in place for them to get to that level that they've definitely got in them. So a simple move like this, I think, would be United's best option. Nottingham Forest, I've gone for Timo Huberz, who plays for FC Köln. They've just been relegated from the Bundesliga. I think this is going to decrease his price massively. 27-year-old centre-back. Despite the logic that he'd have to have had a bad season if he's a centre-back in a relegated side, Huberz was actually a brick wall in the Bundesliga. He had the most clearances per 90 in the league, the second most interceptions per 90, and was top 15 for tackles per 90. He looks like a really good defender, and with Murillo catching all sorts of clubs' attention, I think they do need to look at bringing in either a replacement for him or somebody to partner him, because at the minute Murillo is dealing with the defensive work all on his own, it seems sometimes. For Crystal Palace, I think it's quite obvious they need to get some attacking firepower in terms of players in behind Mateta. Mateta's been really good towards the end of the season, so there's no need to bring in a 9 now, but Eze and Elise are due to be leaving. Eze's already linked with a move to Spurs. Elise's got that release clause, so they need Emil Smith-Rowe. He's got bags of talent, but hasn't been given the time to show it, in my opinion. Every time he's played, he has been very good. I think Crystal Palace can give him that game time. There's going to be lots of clubs after him because his talent is very obvious. Palace needed most out of the clubs that are linked due to the departures that are going to be coming their way. For Newcastle, I've gone for Conor Gallagher. I think with Gallagher leaving Chelsea and Newcastle needing a midfielder, this all works very nicely. I think Bruno Guimaraes is going to get a move to a top 6 club fairly soon, and of course we still don't really know what's going to happen with Tonali when he's back after his ban. So I think Gallagher would suit Newcastle quite well. Obviously he rats around that midfield. His work rate is just incredible. He's technically really good on the ball as well. There isn't much that Gallagher can't do, and for 50 million, which is what Chelsea are valuing him at, I think it's a great deal. For West Ham, they need a Paqueta replacement regardless of what happens. If he gets banned for the gambling accusations, they need to bring in a replacement. If he's fine, makes his move to City, they need to bring in a replacement. So whatever happens, with Paqueta's future, they need Matt O'Reilly. He scored 18 goals and got 13 assists in the league this season at just 23 years of age. He's not your usual 10 because he is very tall, he's 6'2", but he does still operate well in those areas, making his height just even more of an advantage because he does the same stuff that a little player would do, but has that physicality as well. His hold-up play is a big part of his game, and obviously being clearly a very good goal scorer and a provider, he is due a Premier League move in the next couple of transfer windows. Final team then is Wolves. Once again, it's sort of preparing for somebody leaving. I've gone for Jack Clark, Sunderland winger, another one with loads of potential. The Pedro Neto departure is only a matter of time in my opinion, so they need to think about who they're going to bring in to replace him. Clark fits the bill in my opinion, 15 goals and 4 assists this season. 91 chances created, 148 successful dribbles. He is brilliant and is Premier League ready, so I think that Wolves need him. So that is all the teams done, and that is where I'm going to end today's podcast, but there's plenty more that you can go and watch right now. There's loads of stuff coming up for the Euros as well, so be sure to keep an eye out for that. For extra content, you can check out my website, that is inmrfootball.co.uk. I do match reports on there, transfer news, interviews. There's so much stuff on there you can go and check out, analysis pieces as well. So yeah, that's inmrfootball.co.uk. The link for that is also in the description. And if that's not enough, you can follow INMR on X and Instagram, and there's even more stuff on there. Once again, the link for those two are in the description. Thank you very much for listening, and I will see you in the next one.